Adesso abbiamo un colloquio tra specialisti, dunque accogliamo online il signor Rama Gheerawo, che è direttore del Helen Hamlin Center for Design del Royal College of Art in Inghilterra. Invece presente in sala c'è il signor Jasmien, Herssens, dottore e architetto proveniente dal Belgio, e naturalmente la signora, scusate, mio errore, e naturalmente Pete Kercher, cofondatore di ADD, che faranno appunto un breve colloquio, un breve scambio sull'Universal Fa Design e l'Inclusive Fa Design. Come ha detto già prima, non è la sua massima colpa, ma credo che sia anche importante approfondire questo tema. Chiaramente sappiamo che abbiamo anche la pausa caffè verso le 10:45 e dunque vi lascio comunque lo spazio e vi do la parola. Grazie mille.
Grazie. Adesso mi permettete, cambierò lingua, la prossima parte sarà tradotta in inglese perché due persone con cui devo fare la conversazione parlano in inglese. Dunque, Rama, welcome to you, Rama. Welcome, Jasmien. Thank you both for being here with us. Rama, it's a pity you couldn't be with us physically, but it's good to see you online anyway. I'd like to give the floor to you, first of all, Rama, to tell us a little bit about the Helen Hamlin Center for Design at the Royal College of Art. So you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Pete. Can you just give me a yes, Pete, if you can all hear me in the room?
We hear you well. Thank you.
Perfect. Amazing. The system works. So again, just to echo what Pete said, I am so sorry that I'm not able to be there with you. Some family medical situations prevented me from doing that, but I always feel very much with you in spirit when I am talking to a group of people involved in inclusive design, design for all, and universal design. So what is the Helen Hamlin Center for Design? Well, Helen Hamlin is a real person. She's not a Victorian heiress. She's alive and well and living in Chelsea. And in 1986, she was one of the first people to challenge designers of the day to design for older people. At that point, no one was really including people with disabilities or older people. So at that point, she was a graduate of the Royal College of Art, and together with one of the founding directors, Roger Coleman, and with the then Vice Chancellor, Christopher Frayling, the Helen Hamlin Center was born. So we exist to use design to improve the life of people. We're a group of designers, anthropologists, social scientists, neuroscientists, and researchers and academics, we fluctuate from between sort of 20 to 35, depending on projects. We focus on age and diversity. We focus on healthcare, on business impact and social impact. We've done about 320 projects, maybe a little more, with about 220 organizations, governments, Samsung, Panasonic, a lot of tech companies. People have come to us to use the principles and practices of inclusive design to positively affect communities, cultures, customers, and colleagues. So the center has been going for 31 years now. We've written books on processes, people-centered processes. I think this practice of becoming people-centered is also expanding into looking at being planet-centered, and I know that's something very much that we speak about at EIDD as well. So life-centered is really, I think, a future of what we look at. We have worked on projects looking at gender imbalance, looking at childhood obesity. We helped redesign the London ambulance. One of my favorite projects was that, because it was a 7-year project. There were some very simple learnings. How do you restock an ambulance in 5 minutes instead of 45 minutes? Well, you strip out all the wardrobes that are at the back and you put in 5 treatment packs that are the size of a carry-on luggage. And these 5 treatment packs cover things like maternity, wounds, burns, all the things ambulances are typically called out for. End of the shift, you take those 5 out and you put 5 new ones in. So instead of opening all the drawers and cupboards, you've restocked the ambulance in 5 minutes instead of 45.
Rama, can I just interrupt you a moment to raise that point of reducing 45 minutes to 10, because we're running a bit late. So I'm going to be asking both of you to speak a little bit shorter, but I'd like you to focus in particular on one thing. There is a lot of confusion out there in the world about why we use these 3 different terms: design for all, inclusive design, and universal design. In the Helen Hamlin Centre and in the UK in particular, you speak a lot about inclusive design. And so I'd like you to say a little bit to the audience about what is inclusive design and if there is any fundamental difference with design for all. Then Jasmien will do the same thing for universal design immediately afterwards. Sorry for cutting you short, because I'd love to hear you for all the rest of the day. You know how it is. But tempus fugit, I'm afraid. So.
No worries. So say 3-4 minutes on that?
Go.
Perfect. So, and funnily enough, that is actually the speech I prepared. So for us, we think of universal design, inclusive design, a design for all. A little bit like Kardashian sisters. You may not know whether it's Kim or Chloe, but you know it's a Kardashian sister. So they're kind of non-identical twins, cousins, the way we look at inclusive design. Where did inclusive design come from? In 1994, the founding director of the centre, Roger Coleman, wrote a paper for Applied Ergonomics Conference where he made the case to design more inclusively. There were a lot of other people involved in that, particularly Wolfgang Preiser, Elaine Ostroff, who are leading light in universal design in America. What Roger had felt at the time, and what that group and John Clarkson from Cambridge was very much there, was feeling the need to talk about designing inclusively. So the definition given by the UK government in the year 2000 was designers, creators, innovators ensuring that their designs and ideas include the widest number of people. So it was about widest number of people, and the word consumer was there in 2000, which was linking a sort of academic premise to something that was practical and business facing. I think the 3 terms have a lot more commonality than difference. The terms can be used interchangeably, though sometimes, in an academic forum, we can spend a lot of time arguing about nuances and differences. But I will end with very shortly with a Rumi quote that really brings this together. I think the value of bringing the terms together and being inclusive can affect policy, politics, business, research, and the third sector. EIDD, I think, is a great mediator for this. It brings the views together. So just a couple more sentences on inclusive design. That there was very much a business kind of focus. How do you get some of these principles and practices that live in academia into business? How do you get some of these principles and practices that perhaps, not just academia, but gerontology and other fields of study, back in the 1990s, how do you deploy them strategically? And this is where the term inclusive design was born. The American colleagues we were speaking to at the time felt that universal design in America had a real drive from a real sort of architectural built environment drive. And we wanted to look at how do we expand that into products and services. So our very first Include conference in 2001 was bringing together academics, business people, and designers together in the same room. And we still feel that those are conversations that are worth taking place. So the drive from America was really predicated on the use of helicopters as air ambulances in the Vietnam War, on the rise of medication and surgical practice, where soldiers on the front line who would have died horrific deaths in World War I and II were surviving and coming back to the US and driving a universal design movement. So there may be sort of different historical contexts, but I really feel what we need is what EIDD as a platform, as a mediator. And to end, Peter, you'll be pleased to know I'm ending. But to end with, I just love this Rumi quote, which, because quite often I've sat in many meetings where people sort of say it should be universal design, design for all, inclusive design. But to give two quotes, one is from Patricia Moore, the great designer, who said, when there are people who are excluded on this planet, when there's work to be done, we don't mind what it's called as long as we can carry on with the work. And I think, sometimes in academic forums, we've had some really kind of sometimes very stringent and strong debates. And this is where the Rumi quote comes in, because he says, beyond ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there lies a field, and I will meet you there. And that is what I believe these EIDD conferences are. It is that field where we meet, we discuss, we collaborate, and we communicate. So, Pete, back to you.
Thank you very much, Rama. That was quite inclusive as well as of several names that we remember. Roger Coleman, of course, was speaking at the Applied Human Factors and Ergonomics Conference back in 2001, which is the one where Pepetto has now organized the Design for Inclusion sub-conference since 2016. Elaine Ostroff from Boston, whom you mentioned, was the first honorary member of EIDD in Stockholm in 2004. And Patricia Moore received an honorary doctorate under the guidance of Jasmien Herssens, whom I shall introduce to you now, at the University of Hasselt about 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was, Jasmien, where I was invited also. I had the honor to speak during the honorary doctorate ceremony for Patricia. So now Jasmien. Jasmien Herssens was for many years an academic at the University of Hasselt. She retired a few years ago and set up her own consultancy called For Mind, working in Belgium, in the Flemish-speaking part of Belgium. The matrix that has been common in Belgium for many years was universal design, and in the early years we had quite hefty discussions, as Rama mentioned, about the differences, the academic differences between universal design and design for all. And we know, of course, that universal design had a long and strong push, as Rama mentioned, from the experience of the Vietnam War and the resulting Americans with Disabilities Act. And so the focus was very much on the built environment and making the built environment accessible for war veterans. And this was very innovative when it happened in the 1980s, but it became something of a straitjacket, rather restrictive after that. And it was found to be more suitably applicable to legislation than only to the design field. And that's why you find mention of the universal design in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, because it is the more suitable application for legislation. That doesn't mean to say that it's different from design for all. But now I'm going to ask Jasmien to go into this and to tell us something about her own experience and how this has reflected in another country again. Jasmien, you have the floor.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me. You already both told a lot, so I cannot tell that much, but I agree with Rama and Pete that you have to give a name to the child. And I think it's historically grown that universal design was coined in the USA. And there was also the American with Disabilities Act, which was implemented much earlier than we had our legislation here in Europe, which is, in my perception, the reason why universal design has been adapted more strongly in the UN CRPD. And it's just a way of terminology and etymology and language. And as I said, the child gets a name. But in the 90s, Ron Mace coined universal design as an approach to design that incorporates products as well as building features, which to the greatest extent possible can be used by everyone. And I think that last part is the most important one, that it can be used by as many people and as many users as possible. What brought universal design to Belgium is the fact that only one person went to the States to work there and heard of the terminology and brought it back to Belgium. So in our Belgian legislation, there's also a reference to universal design, whereas in terms of etymology and language use, I prefer design for all. Why? Design is at the beginning. It's the noun that is similar in all the terms used, and it's the most important thing, that we use design as a lever to increase social inclusion and increase also empathy in our design. I think that is, I have to keep it short, you asked me, so I hope that will make...
Thank you, Jasmien. I think the message we want to convey to the audience with this session, this very short session, is a reassuring message, both from the voice of inclusive design and from the voice of universal design, that we are on the same track. We are working towards the same aim, and there are important academic differences which we discuss in academic conferences and we write about in academic papers. But when you are working with the challenges you find every day in the real world, that is not the issue. The issue is achieving what we have to achieve. So you will find in the Swiss legislation, as we find in national legislation all over the world, references to universal design. And I want to reassure you that if you comply with those references to universal, if you work in design for all, you will comply with the references to universal design. You do not need to be concerned that they are something else. They are the same thing to all intents and purposes. So our aim here is to reassure you that working in the area with Design for All and coming to the center here in Gubiasco for advice and information and assistance and expertise, you will be guaranteed to be working in compliance with the federal and the canton legislation about design, about universal design. And I think it's that note of reassurance that I want to use to close this session. It's been a little bit shorter than we intended, but that's my fault as well for speaking too long before, so per questo mi scuso. Thank you. Thank you, Rama. Thank you, Jasmien.